sections that's all part of the same story. So I'm going to start with chapter 9, verses 35, and go through chapter 10, verse 1, and then I'm going to skip over. And I am reading from the New Revised Standard Version, if you want to follow. Then Jesus went about all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues, and proclaiming the good news of the kingdom, and curing every disease and every sickness. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion for them, because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, "The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore ask the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest." Then Jesus summoned his 12 disciples and gave them authority over unclean spirits, to cast them out and to cure every disease and every sickness. Jumping over to verse 26 of chapter 10. "Have no fear of them, for nothing is covered up that will not be uncovered, and nothing secret that will not become known. What I say to you in the dark, tell in the light, and what you hear whispered, proclaim from the housetops. Do not fear those who kill the body but cannot kill the soul. Rather fear him who can destroy both soul and body in hell. Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? Yet not one of them will fall to the ground apart from your Father. And even the hairs of your head are all counted. So do not be afraid. You are of more value than many sparrows. Everyone, therefore, who acknowledges me before others, I also will acknowledge before my Father in heaven. But whoever denies me before others, I also will deny before my Father. Do not think that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I have not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to set a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law, and one's foes will be members of one's own household. Whoever loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and whoever loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. And whoever does not take up the cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Those who find their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake will find it. Whoever welcomes you welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me." Please pray with me. Father God, speak to us that we might hear the words you need us to hear on this day. And be with us as we seek to do your will now and forever. Amen. So today we're going to talk about being disciples and making disciples. And everybody knows what a disciple is, right? Disciple is someone who follows another person or who learns from their teaching. So anybody who follows Jesus is a disciple, and one of the things that Jesus asked us to do many times when he was wandering around was to make sure that we were making other disciples along the way, right? So since we're talking about following Jesus today, I thought that we would add a musical interlude to our time this morning. So we're going to be singing. I want you to take out your hymnals and open them to hymn 576. Which I'm sure you all know, but we're just gonna practice first. 576. Everybody know this one? I have decided to follow Jesus. We're going to talk today about what it means to follow. So we're going to practice once, and then we'll see. I don't know. Donna and I both think that you can do it on your own. But we're going to do it with the organ first so that we get the idea, and we'll see how it goes, okay?
Jesus.
So, how many of you have ever seen a movie or a TV show when there's a student pilot who's getting ready to go out on their own for the first time in a plane? You ever seen one of these? They're often, I'm going to admit it, they're often disaster shows. Because you know how it goes, right? The student pilot, something happens. I can think of like 4 right off the top of my head. And the student has gone through all the training. They've taken all the lessons, they've done all the practice, they've gone out, they've had the controls with the instructor in the seat, right? But eventually they have to go out on their own. So when it comes time for them to go up that first time, inevitably they panic. All of a sudden they're like sure that they don't know what they're doing. It's like, are you sure that I'm ready? Maybe you should come with me one more time. Are you sure this is a good idea? There's all this angst going on. And the instructor always tells them, you know what you need to know to fly. And off they go. I feel like when I read these passages about Jesus sending the disciples out to heal people and all that kind of stuff, what I think of is these student pilots who are going out on their own for the first time. Because think about it. These men have been disciples for about 5 minutes. Matthew was called in the first part of chapter 9. And we're in the middle of chapter 9. So they don't have a whole lot of experience yet. They barely know who Jesus is. They've barely met him. They, really aren't sure what the whole thing is about. And yet, he's sending them all away. He's just got them all together, and now he's sending them all away. And I can just picture them. They're like, wait, what? You want us to go where? And do what? And you're not coming? But I feel like if they, even what Jesus tells them in these verses that we read, even in the way he was acting, if they're paying attention, they will discover that they actually do know everything they need, not only to be a disciple, but also to make some. So the first thing that Jesus shows that they need is compassion. Now the word compassion comes from the Latin and all of those different kinds of things. And when you see the prefix "cum" in a word, it generally means with, to go along with. And passio can be either deep feelings or suffering. So compassion means that you feel along with someone, or in some cases suffer along with someone. It means that you attempt to understand what they're going through, right? So at the very beginning of the passage that we read, Jesus is wandering around the countryside and he's meeting up with people who are sort of lost. Right, and they're lost because they're not sure what their direction is. Their religious leaders are not really helping them. They're not fair. Sometimes they expect stuff that's unreasonable. They're not at all comforting. They really concentrate on the law, all of that kind of stuff. And the passage says that they're like sheep without a shepherd. You know what happens to sheep when they don't have a shepherd? They get lost. They have no direction. They're not even sure what they're supposed to do. I'm not going to say that sheep are dumb because they're really cute, but sheep are dumb. So Jesus understands that these people need some sort of direction. And they not only need direction, but they also need someone to care for them. They need to know that there's something somewhere that cares about them, that wants good things to happen to them. And so he decides that he needs to send the disciples out to tell them that the love of God is with them. He feels for them and wants them to be more positive and to feel loved. So, how do we show compassion? Where do you see compassion these days? Anyone? I see it, this is one of those places where I would hope that compassion runs rampant. I see it in churches all the time. I see it in this group as people take care of each other. Listen to the list of prayer concerns, the people that are worried and want to hold one another in prayer. Listen to Maha, who is worried about the souls of her friends. Obviously, if we're doing things the right way, compassion is something that we find here. But we can also find it out there in the world, right? How many of you have heard of Jacqueline, I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, Jacqueline Kiplimo? Anybody ever heard of her? Not necessarily a big celebrity. Jacqueline grew up in Kenya, realized early on that she wanted to be a marathon runner and had the gifts to be a marathon runner. So she trained and trained and trained to be a marathon runner. And in 2010, she was running a big, important race, and she it was very distinctly possible that she could win. And as she was running, she came upon a fellow runner who happened to be from China, who was not having any trouble running, but had both arms amputated. So when he got to the water stations, was having a hard time getting enough to drink. So Jacqueline, this was at mile 6. Jacqueline spent the rest of the race from mile 6 all the way to the end, running alongside this other person and making sure that at each water station, this person got enough to drink. Jacqueline came in second because to her, compassion was more important than winning. Being and making disciples means caring, even and sometimes especially when it's hard, and sometimes when there's a cost. Let's sing about following. So another gift that Jesus gave his disciples as he was sending them out was the gift of encouragement. Not only so that they could be encouraged, but so that they could encourage others, right? That was the whole idea all the time. You get this, and then you share. Now, when he starts to talk about don't fear others, in that part of the passage when he says don't fear them because what is in the dark will come into the light. So there were some people, religious leaders, who were very closed and very narrow, and their view was that the lessons of God and the love of God and any of the rules that came from God were for a very chosen few. Only a few could know about the scriptures, only a few could read them, only a few could learn from them. And why do you think they did that? So that they could keep control, right? It was all about control for these people. So Jesus was like, don't think about it that way. Don't worry about it that way, because the love of God is for everyone. And he talks about don't fear those who kill the body but cannot kill the soul. And I think of Maha's friend, who, in spite of his illness at the end, knew what he was going to do and where he was going. Jesus wants the people, the disciples, and the people that the disciples are going to teach to remember that God belongs to them and that there's no one that can take that away. So, where do we find encouragement? these days? Where in the world? I think of people who are fighting a disease. Ron, your brother, your son-in-law's father, who is fighting cancer. There's people who don't give up, right? How many times have you heard somebody say, cancer can take my body, it's not going to take my soul? I think of my niece, who became even more alive when she found out she had breast cancer and fought it and beat it. I think of, I read in the news this weekend, a woman whose father's girlfriend helped her father kill her mother. And they've both been found guilty and they're going to jail for a really long time, which is good. But she was at hearing, the sentencing hearing, and she's doing a victim impact statement, and she says to the girlfriend, you have taken my parents, but you are never going to touch my soul. She is not letting those kinds of life things get her down. I think of, as a matter of fact, Ruth Blind. Ruth, I did not know this until after she died. Ruth lost 2 daughters, not one, but 2 daughters. I don't even know how you go on from that. Yet you would never know that. Would you ever have known that from knowing Ruth? Ruth had so much faith, right, that she did not let any of those kinds of things stop her. And she was one of the nicest, most happiest people that I've ever encountered. Ruth knew that being a disciple and helping other people become disciples means depending on our faith to encourage us so that we can encourage others. Now, the last thing that Jesus encouraged his disciples to do before they left was that it was important for us to hold each other accountable. Now, this is a really hard one, right? This is especially hard in churches because, we're all Christian, we're all on the same team, we're all the same family, we're all supposed to be nice, right? So challenging other people is something that you could just skip, right? I've served in many churches where holding each other accountable has been extremely hard, in spite of the fact that some people, I know this could be a big shock to you, other churches, of course, always have 1 or 2 who are determined to make trouble. But Jesus challenged people all the time, right? Jesus started with the religious leaders. He challenged the leaders in the government. He said, I came to set father against son, mother against daughter. I came to bring a sword, not peace. He came to shake things up so that people would understand what was important. Whoever does not take up the cross and follow me is not worthy of me. He challenges his disciples to remember that what's most important is to follow, to do the things, to learn the lessons that he's teaching, to do the things that he needs them to do. He says way back at the beginning, this is not in the part I read, but I'm sure you've heard it. He says way back at the beginning, if these people where you're going don't listen, shake the dust off your shoes and go on. Which does not mean that those people aren't important. It just means that we have all responsibilities to each other. So you plant the seed and you hope for the best, and you understand that those people also have responsibility to respond. So it goes both ways. Everybody has to take care of everybody else. So, how do we model accountability? We do it the way Jesus did, not by overturning the tables in the temple, but with the way that he did with those who were trying, right? He did it in a gentle and loving way. At my first church in Connecticut, where I was the senior pastor, I was sometimes known for being tough. Now, I know this is hard to imagine since I'm all sweetness and light, all the time, but, So the problem there was that they had not one, but 2 church splits. They had 2 pastors that they fought over, and they split, but not the same way each time. So some people were on the side the one time, and then it was a mess. So I get there, and they're sort of like a little bit like sheep without a shepherd. But one of the things that they were really bad at was starting rumors and spreading them like wildfire. Now I know that never happens here. Probably never happens in other churches. I'm sure it was just this particular one. But it would be, one of those things like, all of a sudden I would start hearing from all these different churches, well, they say, what they're saying. So I decided I couldn't let this go on because it was hurting the congregation. I not only had to take care of individual people, but I had to take care of the whole church. And this was being destructive. It was not helping at all. It was being destructive. So I started asking questions. And I would be like, so where did you hear that? Or what? And, 9 times out of 10, it was because there might have been a small shift. Now, I did not change anything for 2 years when I got there. But I think after the second year, I might have, switched the offering and the prayer or something. Because that is a big thing in God's kingdom. So as I started asking questions and gently trying to get out, what's your concern? How can I help? It came back to one of 2 people every single time. And they were longtime, stalwart, faithful members of the church who were loved. They also didn't like change. And so anytime anything snapped of any kind of shift, it would start. And so I eventually got back to those particular individuals. And I would be like, so, and they would always be, well, I've heard it. When I asked them who they heard it from, it turns out that they didn't hear it, they made it up. And they finally, and they never admitted that they made it up, but, they said things less and less. And I offered to help, how is it that I can help? And I would, what can we do to make you feel better? And all of these kinds of things. And they suddenly discovered that when they tried to start rumors, nobody else would spread them anymore. Because it wasn't any fun. And they were starting to see that wasn't helping. And they really wanted to concentrate on things that would not only bring the congregation back together, but also send it back out into the world so that they could serve. They were wasting their time when they could have been serving. And so I'm sure that those 2 lovely individuals grumbled under their breath until they died. They tolerated me. I did both their funerals, by the way. So I don't think that I stopped them from being afraid of change. I don't think I did any of those things. I do think that working together, we were all able to stop the destructiveness so that the congregation could grow and do the things that they needed to do in the neighborhood. And the church did grow and got a reputation for doing all sorts of things for the community. Being and making disciples means that we all remember Jesus and the big picture. We remember that whoever loses their stuff can gain the whole world. Let's sing one more time now. So when a movie begins with a student pilot being afraid to go out on their own, you know what's going to happen, right? Something's going to happen during that flight, which is going to test their skills and test their fear and test their determination to fly. As disciples, we can run into all sorts of things that test our determination to follow. But the instructors are always right. They always do find what they need to fly the plane. And the fact is that Jesus was right. Because when we go out there, when we go out from here, we've learned what we need to learn from here. We go out there, we know that we know everything that we need to know. And the other thing is that we know that we are never going out there